Welcome back to our Haunted New England tour, and we are continuing where we left off from last year. But first, a few notes of business. So, I would like to thank all of you that took part in the polls that were posted on where to continue for the next few weeks, or the next month really, and where you wanted those videos to be from. I am not gonna lie, I was a little surprised to see how many of you wanted ghost stories from around the world. I will get on that. I had originally intended to round out New England, which I may still do, with full-length videos from Maine and New Hampshire. Maybe get Vermont a full-length one, we'll see, as opposed to a few shorts. But otherwise, I will see what kind of ghost stories I can dig up from around the world. I know there are a lot, it's just a matter of figuring out where to start in the collection and how to start. So that is the first order. Second of all, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, well, that's because the algorithm probably isn't feeding you posts, and it means you're probably not interacting with the page, which is fine. You know, you're entitled. But if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, comment, because the more you do so, the more you'll actually see stuff as it gets posted. And other people will see that, and they'll find the channel. You know, no pressure. We don't judge here. Alright, now for this weekend's video, we are going up to the Wood Island Lighthouse in Saco Bay, Maine. And you're going to notice that when it comes to the ghost hunting party, I'm not going to be using their names. Why? Well, first of all, I don't really want to put them on blast. Second of all, these accounts are from 2005 and 2006. So there's no way for me to know if they are still active members in the Ghost Hunting Society, if they have chosen to step back. Even the medium that was involved, I don't know if she is still working for them or not. So it's just better to just leave that information out. You can, for all intents and purposes, read these accounts yourself, because as usual, the links will be in the description as you need them. So this lighthouse is an interesting case. There are no records as far as the lighthouse is concerned as to any shipwrecks or events that have happened before the lighthouse, because the towns in which we're talking about were founded probably sometime in the 1600s. The first sawmill in the area was founded in 1653, and the area we're talking about is the Saco River, and then it's the towns of Fletcher's Notch, Saco Bay, or Saco, and Biddeford, Maine, or Biddeford Pool, which got its name from the pool, which was a tidal inlet that it was close by. So the island that the lighthouse sits on is about 35 acres, and it's 2 miles east of the entrance of the Saco River and less than a mile from the village known as Biddeford Pool. Then Fletcher's Notch is to the south and Hills Beach is to the north, and the communities of Saco and Biddeford grew along the banks of the river. And they would grow further with the founding of the first sawmill. Now, most of the industry in town was lumber and fishing. Now, this area around Fletcher's Notch was really hazardous to navigate. So, now the mill was founded in 1653. The lighthouse will not be built and opened until 1808, 1809. So this is going to play a role later when we go over some of the ghost stories or some of the spirits that are encountered. So knowing that, now this lighthouse kind of has a Three Little Pigs feel to it, because I think it's had at least 2, if not 3 building iterations. So the government bought the land for $160 from Pendleton Fletcher in order to build it. And they commissioned, under Thomas Jefferson, $5,000 to build the original lighthouse. Now, the land was bought in 1807? 1807. The lighthouse would be built in 1808, and I believe would be opened in 1809. Now, the lighthouse was built for a total sum of $4,750 by builders Benjamin Beal and Duncan Thaxter. And they were subcontractors for Winslow Lewis. It's unclear, but the 45-foot octagonal wooden lighthouse didn't go into service until the following year. No one knows why. And then the original wooden structure lasted until 1839, when a new one, a 44-foot conical rubble stone tower that was 20 feet in diameter and 10 feet high at the top, was built. along with a new one-story ground dwelling, and this Congress appropriated another $5,000 for this in 1838. So the revolving lighthouse was 69 feet above the high water mark, and the rotation's eclipse created the appearance of a flash at certain intervals to help ships, obviously. There was again a question of whether the new lighthouse was actually sound, because what's happening is the foundation's cracking, it's sliding, there's leaks coming in. This happened with the first one, which was made of wood, and this one was made of rubble stone. And then they finally get it right when they build it out of granite, supposedly, which I think this is what leads to some speculating that the island is actually cursed, because they can't get the building to just stay structurally sound. Now, I do believe that there is a foundation, the Friends of Woodhouse Island. There is also, I think, the New England Foundation for Lighthouses that you can look all of this up on. And the links will be provided. Lighthouse would again be rebuilt in 1854. So, we know something about the structure of the lighthouse. It's a little questionable. But as far as we know, up until this point, everything's been fine. So how is it that the lighthouse ends up haunted? So this haunting dates back to the 1890s when the keeper of the lighthouse, Fred Milliken, who was in his 30s, he was a policeman, a game warden, fisherman, and he and his wife and their kids lived in the house attached to the lighthouse, and he was known as a giant of a man. He could carry his dory on his shoulders, and he just went about living his life. There were two other men supposedly either on the grounds or on the island. One was known as Howard Hobbs, and he lived in a converted chicken coop with another man, William Moses. Now, both of these men were in their 20s. Why is this important, you ask? Well, people do funny things when they're young. They did then and they do now. So on June 2nd, 1896, Hobbs and Moses had gone to the mainland and had gotten very drunk. They went to Old Orchard Beach, were having a good time, and were eventually asked to leave because they were so intoxicated. They were kicked out of the establishment and told to go home or find a place at the inn to crash and sober up. So what did they do? They returned back to the island, as one does. And now Hobbs owed Milliken some money. I think he might have been behind on his rent. There were a few things that he needed to talk to him about. So when the two men get back on the shore, Milliken calls out to Hobbs, "Hey, I need to talk to you for a moment." Hobbs just kind of goes, "Okay," and then keeps walking and goes back to the chicken coop with Moses. And while they're there, Hobbs picks up his rifle. And Hobbs wants to know, why do you have your rifle with you? Oh, I don't know, maybe we'll do some bird hunting. Now, when they arrive back at the lighthouse, they kind of end up at the garden gate, and Milliken's there to meet him. His wife is watching this whole thing from the door, and he is slightly concerned at the fact that Hobbs has showed up with a rifle at his door. Understandably so. So he goes to Hobbs, "Is the rifle loaded?" "No, it's not." "Cool, can I check it?" So as Milliken starts to walk toward him to check the rifle, Hobbs fires at him, hitting him in the chest. Intentionally or accidentally, none of us know, but it might seem by the way the ghosts are reacting, it was an accident. Now, Milliken's wife sees this whole thing from the door. Gadget runs to her husband, who goes, "I think I've been shot." She manages to get him inside along with the help, I think, of either Hobbs or Moses, and lies him down on the bed. Moses and one of Milliken's children leave Wood Island and head back to the mainland, probably to get a doctor. So after Moses leaves with Milliken's son, Hobbs, in a daze, wanders off and lands at the house of one of the former lighthouse keepers, Thomas Orcutt. And Orcutt tries to get him to turn himself in to the police on the mainland, saying that he knows what happened and everything. And Hobbs is still in a daze, kind of doesn't want to. So he goes back to the chicken coop, where he takes his rifle and then proceeds to punch his own ticket. And that is where this story, well, doesn't quite end. So in the process of all of this, Milliken ends up dying. He lives for another 45 minutes and then passes away. And when the authorities show up, they go to get Hobbs. It's too late. He's already gone. And it is thought that their ghosts are the one that actually haunt the island. And that this horrific event is what led to that. There are some records that suggest that it wasn't just a lonely fisherman who jumped out of the window. In 1905, it is said that keeper Charles Burke was so distraught because he could hear the ghost voices of an argument going on and ghost gunshots and cries and whatnot. That these voices so disturbed him and he was so distraught that he finally got so tired of it. He went to the mainland, rented a room at an inn, I believe in Saco Bay, and he was the one to just jump out of the window, which I believe is reinforcing the idea that the island is cursed. Now, there is another note here. There are also records of a massive fire on the island. Now, there was a Frenchman, he's not really given a name from the records I found, who lived on the west side of the island and would sell liquor to visiting fishermen. And what would happen is there would just be brawls and fights that would break out all the time on that part of the island in his little house or his bar, whatever he would want to call it. And in one such instance, the fight was so bad and one of the fishermen was so drunk that he set fire to the establishment. And according to a passerby, the bottles broke and the seething alcohol turned blue flames, creating such torchlight that it was seen 20 miles out at sea. So, there was also another incident. I'm going to read through this from the accounts on the ghost site because I really wanted to get it correct because there's some rather chilling information. So, in 2005, the New England Ghost Project from Dracut, Massachusetts went to the Wood Island Lighthouse. I don't know why I keep wanting to call it something else. Where they encountered the spirit of a man at the top of the lighthouse who repeatedly kept saying, "I didn't mean to do it, I didn't mean to do it, I didn't mean to do it." And as the head investigator and the medium were walking down the stairs, she encountered a woman. And the woman was sobbing and crying on the stairs. Now, they had to kind of carefully maneuver down the stairs because you have ghost energy that, they don't want anyone getting pushed or hurt. So they eventually made it downstairs. And most parts of the evening were quiet as they wandered around different buildings, to the basements, to the outside, the boardwalk. The group moved to the attic where they saw bright green lights moving around but were unable to make contact with the spirits. And then as the group went along the boardwalk that connects the lighthouse to the bathhouse, the medium who was with the group kept seeing shadow figures, and they kept kind of diving at her. Because these shadow figures kept trying to swoop at her and dive at her, the third time it happened, she was actually knocked down and started crawling like she was injured, so much so that the lead investigator had to basically kind of call off and set boundaries for the spirits. So one thing that when you go ghost hunting, or if you're working with spirits, or you're trying to cleanse a house, you have to set very strong boundaries and make it abundantly clear what is and what is not okay. Now, the medium in this case is what's known as a trance or channel medium. And what that means is they go into a trance-like state. The spirit, it comes a few different ways. It either enters them or it enters their field of influence, their aura, whatnot, and then they speak using the spirit's voice, mannerisms, facial expressions. So when someone does that, you might notice that everything about them changes, and then when the spirit leaves or is told to leave, they return to themselves. They will normally interact with maybe one or two other people who are asking questions, or if you've ever seen someone like Esther Hicks, who channels the Spirit Collective of Abraham, she interacts with a lot of different people. If you're familiar with Sybil Leek, who worked with Hans Holzer, I got that right. she was a trance medium, and he was the one that she would work with. Like, she may or may not have taken questions from others in the room if there were others. So what's happening is that these spirits that are dive bombing the medium from this account, they're trying to enter her. They're trying to force her to channel them. And what may be doing is the reason why she was crawling is she may have actually been experiencing what they went through in their final moments, or what some people would call their death state. So the lead investigator had to call them off and basically set the boundary that this is not okay, you are not allowed to do this, and that you need to leave now. They went to the basement of the house, and the medium was able to make contact, and what they ended up seeing was they ended up catching the figure of a woman on film. It was a very gradual progression, but they were able to make contact with her. It is believed that the ghosts of Hobbs, Milliken, and even his wife are still there. And that's who the woman is. It's his wife. So what people will hear moans coming from the chicken coop. Locked doors will mysteriously open. Dark shadows have been observed near the lighthouse, up the walkway, at the top of the tower. They'll hear strange voices. And then there have also been sightings of a woman that is believed to be Milliken's wife. There's a reason why I brought up that not all of the events around the lighthouse were documented. So the New England Ghost Project returned to Wood Island Lighthouse. That's what I keep wanting to say. I keep wanting to say Woodhouse Lighthouse, but it's Wood Island Lighthouse. Well, upon their return to the lighthouse, the group decided to let the medium dictate where they were going to go. So they ended up back at the boardwalk where the medium had been attacked the year previously, in 2005. And while they're there, she was approached by a female spirit who wanted their help and claimed to have been murdered. So with a little bit of navigating and probably much frustration on the case of the living and the dead, they got down where the spirit them wanted them to be, off of the boardwalk. And it was here that the medium was informed that 3 girls were buried in this location, and a shack used to be there, and that they were all killed separately, and the shack was set on fire afterwards. Does this sound a little bit familiar? I can't help but wonder, when I heard this and you heard about the fire at the Frenchman's shack that was caused by the brawl, it makes me kind of wonder if this is the same location on the side of the island. It may not be. It may just be an unfortunate consequence. So when they tried to reconnect with the woman in the basement, there was no such luck. She was not having any of it. All the light, every time they try and set up something, they would try and make it dark. The lights would go on. Things would just go on the fritz. She was having none of it. She didn't really want to be bothered. So they went back up to the attic where they had seen the green lights the year before. And this is the part I wanted to talk to you. This is the part I wanted to read directly. In complete darkness, all you could hear was the crashing of the waves outside. The medium asked that we all hold hands. Suddenly it sounded as if rain was pouring outside. As soon as it had started, it stopped. The harsh pang of a coin dropping was heard behind my head, and suddenly the medium's hand grasped mine so tightly I almost let out a yelp. Suddenly she was not herself. Her voice sounded more like a man than a woman, and she had taken on a Spanish accent. The spirit she was channeling, she said, had been on this island 360 days. Well, that's up for interpretation. We must assume that he meant he was there that many days before he died. He said his name was Roger and that the year was 1762. He was very angry because his captain had deserted him and his shipmates on the island. He explained that there were 10 of them to begin with, and he was one of 3 that was left. When asked what flag he flew under, he said, "I fly under no flag." So it was brought up that if you don't fly under a flag, you must be a pirate. And the spirit turned around and said, "Choose your words wisely, sir." Oh, sorry. "Choose your words carefully, sir," warned the spirit. The spirit began to repeat over and over how cold it was, and as he said this, the medium began to get colder and colder, and her grip got tighter and tighter, and I started to wonder if it was safe for her body temperature to be so low. The lead investigator decided the spirit needed to go, and he told him to leave at once. No, the spirit screamed, and the medium's body began writhing, and noises coming out of her mouth were that made The Exorcist sound like a Disney movie. When she was finally free of Roger, her hand relaxed and her body temperature returned to normal. A bluish, acrid smoke wisped through the air. The medium said she had had about enough for the night, as had everyone, and it was time to sit around in the safe room, tell jokes, eat food, and try to forget what had just happened. Two of the people went up to go to bed, and the person writing this was about to go the same, and they said, I'm going to go check out up there, but it's kind of creepy in the room they had chosen, so they may sleep down there, to which the medium responds, they're still awake, I can hear them talking. No one was talking. It took about 15 minutes to convince her that no one was playing a joke on her, because she kept hearing voices and she kept hearing people talking. Then she started hearing music, and the spirits apparently wanted to have the last word on the evening. So the person writing this attempted to sleep downstairs and didn't get much sleep. And it ends with the thought that the New England Ghost Project would like to go back to the Wood Island Lighthouse again. So that's why I said some stuff hasn't been documented around the lighthouse. Now, clearly there must have been ships that have gone down or people that were abandoned on the island that was before record keeping of the lighthouse. So that in itself is kind of interesting and worth looking into. I meant to before I did this and forgot. Such is life. But you can actually, if you so choose, you can go to the Wood Island Lighthouse. They run tours. There might be a ghost tour. You might have to double check, because I found a few different websites that take you to different societies that help manage the lighthouse and care for them, or care for all the lighthouses. So, but you can most definitely go and visit and walk around and see what you can come up with on your own travels. Let me know, actually, if you go and if you experience anything. I'd be really curious to find out. So hopefully this is a good start for you for our haunted location tour, and we'll see where we land next. All right, my friends, until we meet again, happy hauntings!